Ha! I fooled you! There was a Halloween video ready and you were none the wiser. If you have no clue what I'm talking about, pause this video right now and go watch this one. Whoosh, it's right here. Then come back and finish this video. Then go back and rewatch every other video I've uploaded so that you can understand the full lore that we're working with here. Anyways, it's time to Scoob some doos. Scooby Doo has been around longer than you or I, and it will outlive every single one of us, so it's not surprising that between the early 90s to late 2000s we got a lot of games based off of everyone's favorite mystery solving mutt. But which virtual Scoobs are the best ones and which ones deserve to be forgotten, like Googie, Shaggy's girlfriend who only appeared in one movie and whose name you'll forget within minutes? Well, I'm here to find out with my patent-pending Scooby Doo video game ranking system, which is to say, a tier list, where I will place every Scooby Doo console and handheld game, no mobile games, no PC games, and I'm gonna say no ZX Spectrum games because it's a bitch and I hate it, but here's some footage from the one and only ZX Spectrum Scooby Doo game to satiate you. Now to start with the real video games, here's Scooby Doo Mystery for the Super Nintendo. Developed by Sunsoft, this game hits me hard with a good impression from the music alone. I am a sucker for the Scooby tunes, and this game takes some of the classic cartoons tracks and ports them pretty well to the Super Nintendo. Gameplay wise, it's a very standard 2D puzzle platformer. You can move, you can jump, you can talk to the rest of Mystery Inc., and you can solve a mystery. Sorry, that's wrong. Velma can solve the mystery. Scooby and Shaggy are just the clue monkeys. Actually, Fred and Daphne barely do anything this whole adventure either. So Scooby and I just wander around and find clues and solve puzzles for everyone else. The actual game part of the game is just okay. You move around at a kind of slow pace and you just wander from room to room hoping you stumble upon whatever you need to do next without rhyme or reason. You just kind of stumble into the next part of the game. The charm is here though. The sprites are really well made and pay respect to the cartoon, and like I said a minute ago, this music is genuinely just kind of fun to vibe to. So the overall presentation gets a solid grade from me. The game even attempts some regular platforming in a later segment, and I think attempt is the best descriptor because what in the name of Scrappy-Doo is this shit? Your jump is limp and splatty and so small you have to really time out your jumps to make it across the platforms. You take damage from falling, which will always be a cardinal sin in any 2D platformer, and when you finally get to the end, you find Ted.
Let's invade Poland!
After about 20 minutes of gathering clues and kind of just randomly seeing what items are used where, we find out someone has been using a not yellow submarine to steal treasures from underwater caves. So we construct a trap and I spend the whole 3 minutes wandering around to find that someone. We trap them, unmask them. They were a character I never met in the game, so I don't give a shit. Meddling kids. The end. Overall, the game is just aggressively average and had a few bright spots with the presentation and even these cute minigames that popped up and emulated the shenanigans. But between the slow locomotion between locations and the dreadfully drab dialogue, this isn't that worth it to quench your mystery solving thirst on the Super Nintendo. If I could surgically remove the walkie-talkie bits down to just puzzle and mystery solving, it'd be like a B tier at best, but I'm not a surgeon, so it goes down in C. Plus, it has false advertising. The game is called Scooby Doo Mystery, but there's more than one mystery, so I don't have to solve this shit. Hey, you! Give me like 10 seconds to tell you that I have a Ko-Fi. Coffee? I don't know how it's pronounced, but if you like what I do and want to support me, you can drop $1 or $2 through there. I promise I won't use it for anything illegal. Her name's Googie, by the way. Back to the video. Next up, Scooby Doo Creep Capers on the Nintendo 64. The game starts with Scooby and Shaggy emerging from the void and finding a crashed truck. Thrown into gameplay and I already want to throw up as this game uses the Resident Evil camera system. And if you don't understand what that means, I'm sure you can understand the nausea in play on screen. The camera just snaps to the next position instead of following the characters, so coupled with the regular 3D stick movement, it's genuinely a headache just to move from point to point, which is a great first sign to what the rest of the game is going to be like. I put out the fire, but decide to not call 911 because Shaggy recognizes that ambulance fees are way too high, so we instead meet up with the gang and agree that we should break into the museum. Just an average Saturday night activity, you know the drill. Outside of the horrendous camera, the movement is like the bare minimum for a 3D game, but you know what makes it below average? The fucking dog the game's named after. He just loves to stand right in front of you because the devs thought it would be really cool for him to be fully collidable. Well, we have a clunky camera, clunky controls, and a clunky companion. Any upsides? Well, the atmosphere is kinda eerie, so it gets that right, and this sandwich making minigame is better than the one on the SNES, but Jesus Scooby Christ, if we're judging these games on their sandwich abilities, I think we're in trouble. Basically, don't play this game. It's frustrating. I couldn't figure out any of the story or what was going on because I couldn't even tell what I was looking at most of the time. I think Scoob was conspiring against me, and I couldn't tell if the monster I should avoid was the Black Knight or Richard Nixon. I'm not a crook. F tier. I'm gonna hope the Game Boy Color port fares better or there's gonna be big trouble. And fare better it does. It's basically a point-and-click style story game where you try and solve the mystery of the ghost thief. It's charming, the music is nice, the visuals are pretty fun, and it feels like one of those old LucasArts point-and-click games. And just like those games, I got stuck 5 minutes in, wasted time running around like a headless chicken for another 5 minutes, looked up a walkthrough, and then resorted to randomly trying every item on every interactable object I could see. It was a great strategy that worked for 20 minutes before my emulator crashed. B tier, would crash again. Man, I sure wish there was a Scooby-Doo game about Scooby-Doo going into a video game. Where's that hand coming from? Scooby Doo and the Cyber Chase on PlayStation 1. I used to really like this movie when I was younger, and I won't let the internet ruin that for me, but I'm also aware the internet is really against this video game. I vaguely remember Cadicarus doing a video talking about how terrible the game is, and while making this video I came across a Reddit thread about the game claiming it to be one of the hardest games, with some comments even agreeing. And at the risk of just contributing to this echo chamber, I think that Scooby Doo and the Cyber Chase is actually not that bad. Yeah, I don't get why everyone got their pants in a twist over it. It's just a slightly above average Crash Bandicoot clone, and it's not even that difficult. Am I missing something here? It controls okay, it sounds and looks okay, and I had an okay time with it. I think the hardest parts were when I fumbled the controls a bit and steered Shaggy into a river, but that one was just on me. You run around, throw pies at enemies, do some standard platforming, and get to the end of the level. I think it's way too basic even for the time it came out, and the rest of Mystery Inc. doesn't ever shut up with tutorials and hints even after you're into the second world, but I'd be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it a little. Best part of the game, hands down though, are the overly violent sound effects, like the checkpoint sound being a bootleg Pro Skater sound, and the sound that plays when Shaggy picks up food. I guess the only real criticism I can levy against it when compared to the other Scooby-Doo games is the lack of any kind of mystery solving, but aside from that, it's easily the best one so far. A tier. And what about its Game Boy Advance counterpart? Utter shit. It lulls you into a false sense of security by making the first level literally baby's first platformer, then the second level is a load of horse shit that even Crash Bandicoot 1 wouldn't put you through. I was stuck on it for 10 minutes and still couldn't beat it. It's also broken as all hell if you can't see, so I'm just not bothering with it anymore. Get your ass down in F tier with the Nintendo 64 game. Well, we're on the GBA, Scooby Doo, the movie, the game, on Game Boy Advance. Yes, those James Gunn movies had games made of them, and I don't know why, but they were only on the GBA. No console ports. I hope that reflects better on the games than it did the movies. Scooby Doo movie game is a top-down adventure game, and stop. This is all I can tell you before I show you the game, because if you have never seen this game before, you're physically not going to be ready to see what it looks like, what the art style is. You may think you're ready, but you'll never be prepared mentally, physically, spiritually, scoobily, any way you want to slice it. You ain't ready, but I'm going to show you anyways. I'm sorry.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
This is easily the worst looking GBA game I've ever seen, somehow looking even worse than fucking Urban Yeti. Scooby looks like a stop motion turd, all the people look like disfigured Barbie dolls, and then I lost it at GBA crunched Matthew Lillard. Fuck. Look at him! He looks like a thumb! Or something I should censor. Jesus, Matthew. After a 3-minute long opening cutscene, we finally get control of Scooby and oh god, he somehow looks worse when I'm in control. Why is there a dedicated pose button? We run around for a bit and learn we need to help the hotel manager find her keys, which means we need to empty the pool since the keys are in the pool for some reason, which means we need to find Velma's glasses so she can help us empty the pool, and I can tell right now this is just a big serious fetch quest, isn't it? Moving around is slower than a colonoscopy and just as painful. And there's no map, so good luck trying to memorize where anything is in this pixelated hell. We get into the basement and play that pipe minigame. You know, the one that every single game uses when you need to fix pipes. Except it's worse because the controls are just ass backwards and there's an incredibly strict time limit. We get back to the pool, get the keys, and just when I think the fetch quests are over and I get onto the game, I'm told I need to talk to this guy called Dead Mike, who looks about as dead as I feel, and we need to go fetch another item, and I just can't be bothered. Sorry, Mike, you're gonna need to die somewhere else. If you can't tell, I didn't like this game. The most joy I got was the terrible art and the fact I named my save file Zit. Frights. So I'm putting this one down in F tier too. Let's go back to the consoles for a bit, because we seem to have a little bit better of a time there with the GameCube game Scooby Doo Night of 100 Frights. My expectations skyrocketed the moment the intro played, because it's an incredibly cute and charming recreation of the original Scooby Doo intro, complete with the original music, and look, I'm a sucker for this kind of fan service, okay? And I'm pleased to say the game doesn't let up with it. The cutscenes are filled with classic music, sound effects, even the old canned laughter.
You know what that means, buddy? Yeah. Seafood!
Even more fitting since none of this is actually that funny. The story involves the gang checking out a haunted mansion. Scooby and Shaggy stay behind to find some dirt to eat or something, and Shaggy falls down a big hole, so we gotta find him. Getting control of Scooby, and damn, he controls really well, and all of his animations are done just as well. My favorite detail being his run plays the running sound effect. It's adorable. And despite the gameplay basically being a stock standard GameCube era 3D collectathon, god damn it, it's so charming and full of love and callbacks to the cartoon. From the impeccable visuals to the great sound design, it's easily the best game so far, going well above Cyber Chase. The plot doesn't make a lick of sense since Shaggy just randomly shows up and disappears without much fanfare, but who cares? It leads to really fun moments like the swinging section or the auto-moving section on the tractor. It's also kind of set up like a Metroidvania, as areas of the map are blocked off unless you get a specific item, like a double jump or a helmet, so you can bash through the spider webs. And given how huge this map is, it seems there's a whole lot of meat on these bones. On top of the authentic presentation and the genuinely fun gameplay, that stupid laugh track gets me every time because it randomly plays throughout the levels, and god damn it, sometimes its comedic timing was on point. I genuinely don't want to say too much about this one, because if you're an aspiring Scooby-Doo fanatic planning out their collection, or you're just a fan of licensed kids games, you absolutely need to play this. S tier. Argue with me all you want. Gonna ride the high of this one and play its sequel, which was also on GameCube, and judging by the opening cinematic being a broken mess, I'm excited. Playing the game, and I'm saddened to see this plays absolutely nothing like 100 Frights. That's because both Scoobypedia and the regular Wikipedia are frauds and claim this to be a follow-up to 100 Frights, when it was done by a completely different studio and in an almost completely different genre. One of these days I won't be vexed by a Wikipedia article, but today is not that day. So what is Scooby-Doo Mystery Mayhem? A shitty Luigi's Mansion. I'm not even kidding. The first 15 minutes is an incredibly boring third-person puzzle adventure game with the same fucking issue of Scooby standing in your way when you randomly come across a real-ass magic book that captures the real-ass ghosts. And unlike Luigi's Mansion, where it's a fun and quick little tug of war, you have to randomly spam buttons. It feels super lifeless to use. Get it? Lifeless like a ghost? Ha 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 ha. But they also put a meter on the thing, so you can't use it whenever. But also the little spirit things to refill the meter are easy to find, leading me to wonder, why is there a meter at all? When it's not a Luigi's Mansion ripoff, it's sluggish and boring. Who would play this? D tier. Get out of here. Here's a sentence very few would say, but I have high hopes for the GBA port. And it's worse! It's a dime a dozen bare-bones 2D platformer with movement as slow and as fun as churning butter. You sneak around avoiding ghosts, except you can't sneak around some of them because the level funnels you into them, and also sometimes you physically cannot avoid touching the ghost because, I don't know, the devs thought it would be funny. It's just so infuriating and boring. It's one of the worst combos you can have your game be. Does any of this look fun? I know with some of these games I have very little say, but what can I say about Scooby-Doo Minstrel Cycle? F tier. And after that, I got to play Scooby-Doo 2, the movie, the game, also on GBA. So my day is going great, thanks for asking. Ooh, a password screen. I bet I can crack the code. We start the game off with marginally less horrifying digitized actor faces when suddenly, tutorial. We play as Scoobert Doobert yet again, but he controls terribly and looks like a stuffed corpse. But don't worry, if you ever want to see how Great Danes climb ladders, this game has you covered. We have another 2D platformer on our hands, but thankfully it's a bit better since it's action focused and not puzzle focused. But unthankfully, the action is a load of dog feces. Your main attack is super short and awkward, and your aerial attack is just an ass slam that shoots straight down and is very easy to miss. But the game does make up for it by giving Scooby the best level win animation I've seen so far. Thank you, Fred, for telling me to find the rope, and may I say you look really good tweened, like a shitpost flash animation. Aw, he shed a tear. It means he's full of fluids. Hey kids, do you like below average platforming levels? Well gee, goody gumdrops, how about a below average platforming level, but this ass rag chases you around and hits you in your big meaty hitbox. Well, it's a good thing you can fight back against this flying fuck in the next level, and it's actually impressive. The developers made anything that would sound fun unfun, including fighting a ghost dinosaur with a sword. But it isn't fun. It's slow and awkward, so I'm upset. You spend an entire level awkwardly waving him away, then beat him in 40 seconds in a limp and soggy boss fight right after, which makes me question what was the point of the whole waving him away thing. Then you get to run around an old guy's house as Scooby, Daphne, and Shaggy, whose level win animation is so horrifying it made me vomit and quit the game forever. D tier. Holy shit, we're almost done. Time for the final GameCube game, Scooby Doo Unmasked. The game starts with another intro recreation, but honestly this one looks way better. All the models have been given a slightly stylized facelift, and we get imagery like this. We have another 3D platformer, and you know what? It's almost as good as 100 Frights. Good job, game. Main difference is this one is both more linear and more open at the same time, if that makes any sense. Instead of being a strange 3D Metroidvania, the levels are more linear in where you go, but each level is comprised of large rooms that give you a few things to do. Fight enemies, do a platform challenge, solve an incredibly easy puzzle. I like it. Scooby controls really good here, arguably better than 100 Frights. One issue with this game is the pacing though. Levels kind of just go on and on for a while, longer than they probably should, and that'd be okay if they had unique set pieces or anything specific and memorable to them, but they really don't. They're missing that little bit of memorable areas like the mountain or the tractor chase in 100 Frights, but you know, this is just okay. I thought the game would pick up when I got the Kung Fu Scooby ability, which should have really been called Scooby Foo, but I won't be pedantic, but it doesn't do much besides allowing you to open doorways and it goes away relatively quickly. It doesn't even do much in combat compared to Scooby's regular form, so it feels like wasted potential. The game isn't bad, far from it, it just feels like a lot of this could have done with a bit more polish or focus. Between this and 100 Frights, you can make the argument this one is better because of the gameplay, but to be honest, I'm gonna go against my usual ways of looking at games and put it under 100 Frights just because that game has way more charm and feels way more like a love letter to the cartoon. Whereas this one just feels like a slightly above average 3D platformer that happens to be based on a cartoon. I think the comparison that makes the most sense to me is that Unmasked is a 3D platformer that happens to be themed around Scooby Doo, whereas 100 Frights is a Scooby Doo 3D platformer, if that makes sense. A tier though, this is still really good. This game actually had two different handheld ports, one for the GBA and one for the DS. Let's tackle the GBA first, as its track record of terribleness has been pretty consistent, and this is the last game on that console, so let's see how they ruined an above average 3D platformer. Oh, it's another 2D platformer. Oh, and it's actually fun, and it looks good. What is this trick? This video has one consistent message, and that's the GBA has terrible Scooby-Doo games. What is this challenge to the status quo? Not only is it fun, but it improves on some of the stuff from the GameCube version. Combat is a bit snappier because it takes place on a 2D plane, so you also don't have to worry about any camera funkiness that is naturally tied to 3D games. The only actual complaint I can put forth is the levels go on a bit too long, but I don't mind because I'm having a good time. So yeah, for its last GBA outing, this game is actually really good. It's not mind-blowing, it's not going to give Mario a run for his money, but it's absolutely something I could see myself playing as a kid. And hell, I could probably boot this up and play it again casually in the future. Good job, Unmasked, you redeemed the GBA. A tier. Too bad you shat the bed on DS. Take the GBA version, give it very unappealing early DS 3D models, make the controls feel really awkward, and give it unnecessary touchscreen minigames. I don't know how one game can be split between 3 ports of varying degrees of quality, but good job, A2M, you made me regain and re-lose hope in humanity, and your DS port is going to C tier. A2M, what does that even mean? A2M. Ass to mouth. Hey, come here. No, come here. I got something to tell you. Come here. Yeah, come right here. There's one more portable console I have to play. The PlayStation Portable, the nut you can play with outside, also had a single Scooby-Doo game. Scooby Doo, Who's Watching Who? The game starts, and even though someone has smeared Vaseline on the opening cutscene, I can still appreciate the intro spoof. Apparently these guys are the ghost investigators, and we gotta out-sleuth them in a haunted manner. Look, I know that wasn't much of a story, but I've been skipping the stories of these games because they all basically boil down to Zoinks, Scoob! We should avoid that old ghostly witch and go after a turkey sandwich! Now help me do some generic platforming for 20 minutes while Velma solves the mystery. Raggy, do you think we're ruppets, forced to repeat the same actions every ray, as unrountable enumerations upon our roads, until we're run, swallowed by the oblivion. Like Zoink Scoob, it sounds like you'll need 2 sandwiches. We arrive at the manor and we get the choice of 3 different gameplay styles to find clues. There's a racing segment that controls pretty okay, a Crash Bandicoot style chase sequence, and a free roaming 3D platforming level, and I'm gonna be honest here, it's overall better than I was expecting. It's not fantastic, but for a PSP Scooby Doo game, it's pretty good. And what is this? An actual mystery-solving element? Yeah, unlike every other game that basically just reduces the mystery into a checklist of clues to take to Velma, you actually analyze each clue and try to deduce which of the 3 suspects lines up most with the evidence. It's really creative and actually had me sitting there thinking hard on who it was. None of the previous games actually had me use my brain for longer than 5 seconds, so this genuinely gets the seal of approval from me. S tier, right below 100 Frights. And what about its DS counterpart? Well, shit man, it's also really good. Just as good, if not better than the PSP version. It has the same 3 segments as last time, but they're all a little more streamlined and a little more fun. The platforming is clearly going for an even more Crash Bandicoot-like experience, but I don't mind because it's actually pretty solid. The racing segment is less about racing, more about exploring the map for clues, and the only part that was a bit worse was the chase segment, relying more on the touchscreen, but like, I didn't really mind. Hell, the mystery solving is a bit more fun using different tools on the touchscreen, and I even had a different culprit this time, so I couldn't just cheese my way to the ending by reusing my knowledge from the last game. And look, I'm gonna be honest, I will always love 2D sprites in a 3D environment, especially on a console like the DS, which can barely handle 3D, so that little bit of presentation change is enough to push it over to being better than the PSP version. S tier, still being eclipsed slightly by 100 Frights, but that is not at all at this game's fault. These 3 are amazing. Finally, we move on to the final 4 games, 2 for Wii and 2 for DS. And if I say these 4 are the best of the series, almost rivaling 100 Frights, would that be surprising? Okay, let's take a look at the Wii games first. First Frights and Spooky Swamp. These 2 games were both made by Taurus Games, who, as far as I can tell from a glance, basically only make licensed games, from the earliest work of Beavis and Butthead on the Game Boy, all the way to Lego 2K Drive for modern consoles. But I don't even need to play the rest of their library to know that Scooby-Doo sits atop their ziggurat. A ziggurat is like it's like a fancy pyramid. It's also just a really fun word to say. Scooby-Doo First Frights is a 3D platforming beat-em-up puzzle hybrid, which sounds really confusing, but I'm gonna make a comparison. It's basically just a really lukewarm Lego game. Now I know what you're thinking, how can this game be any good when the art style looks like everyone drank expired milk? And I don't know. Like I said, it's like a Lego game, but just not as good. It doesn't have the same level of charm or collectible hunting, however, it's just a genuinely pretty fun time. Combat is enjoyable, if a bit mindless. The puzzles are simple enough that they don't really break up the pacing, but not so simple I feel patronized for doing them. There's multiplayer, but I'm alone and ugly, so somebody else will have to take the bullet and see if it ruins the experience. But the computer player you're paired with, when alone, isn't brain dead. The levels aren't too long, so it doesn't feel like a slog. The platforming is fun, and I don't know what to say. It really is just a slightly watered down Lego game, but even the worst Lego games are fun in a brain turn off kind of way. And its sequel, The Spooky Swamp, even better somehow. The levels are more open, puzzles and exploration are focused on more, with my absolute favorite addition being the ability to pick up and throw objects in the world. You can swap between any of the characters at any time. There's so much more here than I was expecting from a pair of Scooby-Doo games on the Wii. If First Frights was a below average Lego game ripoff, then Spooky Swamp is an above average Lego game ripoff, sitting in S and A tier respectively. I still think 100 Frights is the absolute best game of this video, but these 2 are just really fun and worth it, despite the awful redesigns. They look like toddlers, but Fred can still drive. I hate this. Oh, and I almost forgot. Those 2 DS games I mentioned, they're the handheld version of these 2 games. And by handheld versions, I mean full-on fucking ports. I am not deceiving you, this isn't a bit or anything. Taurus Games somehow ported a full-fledged Wii game onto the DS. I know the Wii version wasn't pushing the console to extremes or anything, but come on man, this is still impressive. And I really do mean full-fledged ports from what I can tell, because the only difference between the 2 versions is a slightly shorter level. Yeah, I didn't play through all 4 games all the way to fully make sure my claim is true, but like, look at this. Look at it! They even managed multiplayer on this one too! What makes it funny is that since it's on weaker hardware, they had to strip down on the sound effects and on the visuals, so while all the cutscenes are pre-rendered from the Wii, the sound effects are just violent and crunchy, with my favorite detail being everyone in Mystery Inc. lands with a loud metal bang that sounds like they're all made of lead. Well, scary masked person, I played all 19 Scooby-Doo games and caught you in my trap. Time to figure out who you really are. Huh? Lydian Music from Twitter.com? You were the scary masked person all along? Why did you make me play all those games?
Because I wanted to make you feel something for once.
Wow, that is a really good alibi and definitely covers up all the definitely illegal stuff that you did that I can definitely understand you doing because this isn't just a pre-recorded message.
I know, it's so kooky, right?
You want to plug anything before I send you to jail?
You can follow me on Twitter and subscribe to my YouTube.
Epic. Merry Christmas, everyone.
The fuck? I was talking.
Holy shit, Scrappy killed Velma. Did you know about
Yeah,
this?
I knew about that.